I am a big fan of Lynn McTaggart. She's written several books, and one of them is called The Bond. Fabulous book. And in this book, she cites a study that began back in late 1930 by a gentleman named Arlie Bach. And the study was intended to learn about what creates lasting happiness. So what they wanted to do is, back in 1930, they decided it was going to be a 70-year study, so over a long period of time. And what they did was they went to Harvard University. And at Harvard University, they hand-selected 268 young men, because women didn't go to Harvard back then, so 268 young men that were hand-selected because they thought they had the most promising future. And over the course of those 70 years, the intention was to track their lives, and they had a team of doctors and psychologists and psychiatrists and social workers that would ask them questions and probe them and do all kinds of psychological tests throughout their entire life with the intention of discovering what creates lasting happiness. At the same time, move over to Boston. Similar study is launched in Boston, only this time it's with inner city youth, boys in Boston. So most of these kids were born in poverty, and their parents, most of them were foreign born. So they were the descendants of immigrants. You know, their parents were immigrants. So they did a similar study for 70 years. And around 1967, there was a new person that took over the study, because when you do a 70-year study, you're probably not going to finish it off. So at 1967, George Valent takes over the study. And what he expects to find when he takes over this Harvard study is 268 success stories that he can learn from. Yeah, that's not what happened. There were a few success stories. In fact, one of the men in that study was John F. Kennedy. So there were some definite success stories, but what they found is that a third of the men in the Harvard study had suffered in their lifetime some form of clinical mental illness, and a huge percentage of them were alcoholics. So what did they find in this 70-year study? Well, one thing they found was that money and a good start was not the key. It is no guarantee for happiness and success, even though you have all the privilege in the world. They also found that good luck didn't guarantee happiness. It wasn't just about being lucky. They found that there wasn't any particular personality style that was making people more apt to be successful and happy. So, what is the secret? What did they discover? Well, here's a hint. In your bulletin, you'll see a page that looks like this. Have you seen this illusion before? So how many of you, when you look at this, the first thing you see is the faces? You see the faces? How many of you see the vase? Can you see them both? Can you see the vase? So there's the faces, and then there's the vase in between, depending on how you look at it. So this holds the key to what they found. There is a quantum physicist named Werner Heisenberg who is known for something called uncertainty principle. Uncertainty principle states, essentially, that there's no such thing as a thing. You know, when you take any piece of matter and you drill down and you see the atoms, and then you go down and you see the molecular structure, and you go down and you go, mostly what you see is just a bunch of energy. You know, there's mostly nothing. Most of what we see when you go into the small spaces, it's mostly nothing. So uncertainty principle says, essentially, there's no such thing as a thing, that the only thing that is real is the space between the things. So the way they say it is, it's the indivisible relationship between things that is real. That's reality according to uncertainty principle. So as we talk about our spiritual journey, it's easy to come into a situation like this, and I have my journey, and you have your journey, and there's you, and we see individuals on a spiritual path. But there's really more to it than that. That what's more real than the individuals is the relationship that we build together. That is what's real. So I can't be a spiritual leader without a congregation. It's our relationship that is what makes us who we are, that we need each other in order to be who we are. So you can see the second illusion. You like this one? So when you see that one, do you see the columns? And then when you see what's in between, so there's the people in between. So there's, what we're used to seeing as reality, the thing, but uncertainty principle would say what's real is actually the space between the things. So it's all about relationships, and it's our relationship that is the ultimate reality. So relationships can get a little tricky sometimes. Jesus says, in the world, you will face persecution. So not all relationships are going to go swimmingly nice. But take courage, he says, I have conquered the world. And when I look at this, I love this second allusion because I think about that quote, I have conquered the world. I think what he's saying is he was able to see not just the things, but he was able to create in the space between the things. He was able to create in the realm of love and compassion and forgiveness in a realm that is much more real than just the things that we see. So this is about remembering our oneness. In Unity, we teach oneness, that we are connected. And when I first started teaching in a Unity church back in Texas, I remember I was going to Unity Village, and I was going through all these classes, and we were teaching oneness, and it was wonderful, and go within, God's within, everything you need to know is within you. That if you need clarity, go within, go to prayer, go to meditation, that there is no one that is more divine than anybody else. And so I would go to Unity Village, and I would say, okay, I get that, I love that, God's within us all, I get it. So what's my job as a spiritual leader? God's within you. You don't need me up here guiding you. Your guidance is within you. So I was just like, well, what's the whole point of a church? I didn't go to church much growing up. Like, why do we do this thing if our teaching is all about God is within? And I never got an answer I really liked. So I was in that question the whole time I was starting my community. I'm like, what if there's more to the spiritual journey than just the journey within? Because wouldn't it be nice to go, live in a cave and have pizza delivered and run an eBay business and not have any relationships to have to contend with, but just, be enlightened all the time? Like, that sounds awesome. But we know that that's not how it works. That the going within is a part of it, but it's not the whole journey. We have to be in relationship with each other in order to truly and fully know God. We can know God within, but that's an incomplete knowing. To fully know God, we have to know each other. And we have to be masters, not just of what we feed into our own minds and our own hearts, but masters of what we feed into the space that lives between us. And this community is the perfect laboratory for us to learn how to do that. So I think that's the purpose of spiritual community. I love Esther Hicks, Abraham Hicks' teachings, if any of you are familiar with that. So one of the things, she has a program called Getting Into the Vortex with a bunch of meditations. And I was contemplating this whole idea of relationship, and I listened to these meditations. And one of the things she said really resonated with me. She said, without others, you cannot be you. Without others, you cannot be you. That who you are is the result of the relationships that you have with your family, with your coworkers, with your spiritual community, with the nation, with the world, with the earth. You cannot be you without others, that we live in this integrated whole. So it's not just about the personal journey, it's about the journey of relationship. I have heard, and this is in the book, The Bond, as well, the first impulse of the human brain, do you know what it is? It's to bond with the brain of the mother. The first impulse of the human brain is to bond. So mother, baby, there is something called entrainment where the brain waves begin to sync. And that's the first thing the brain learns to do. A baby's brain will sync with the prefrontal cortex of the mother's brain because that's how the baby is learning how to integrate information in the world. And what happens when that baby is separated from that mother is that harmonious brainwave becomes discordant. Which is why, have you ever noticed that, a mother's holding a baby and the baby's all happy and then you pass the baby off to someone else and the baby's like, yeah! I used to think I was so bad with kids. I was terrified of babies until Jenna came along. I was terrified of babies because it felt like every time someone passed off a baby to me, that baby was never happy. And it's because their brain wave is coming out of sync with their mother. So that's why babies, when you send them back to the mother, you notice you send the baby back to the mother and instantly, because their brain waves sync back up again. So I was so relieved when I had my own. I'm like, oh, this is easy when it's mine, because that's the impulse of the brain. So Esther Hicks has a series of meditations, and in them she has some wonderful quotes that I have adapted into affirmations, sort of unity style, which I think are incredibly powerful when we think about how we relate to each other. So I'll say them, they're long, I'm going to chop them up into little pieces so that you can repeat them back with me, and I invite you to really take them in. So here's the first one. Sometimes it seems like other people have the power to negatively impact my experience. And this one's kind of fun to kind of shake your finger if you want to, but you can say, but that is never true. That is never true. All right, so take a deep breath in. I'm going to say it all the way through so you can really listen to it. Sometimes it seems like other people have the power to negatively impact my experience, but that is never true. And I have evidence of this because I had a Labrador puppy in my home that I tried to train. The problem was, to train a dog, I was trying to use cause and effect. You do something wrong and there's a negative consequence. I could find nothing that would negatively impact this dog's experience. So the dog would get into the trash, and I'd be like, you should not do that. You are banished to the backyard. And the dog is like, yes, I love the backyard. So I can dig in the backyard. And so they dug up my entire yard. And I'm like, you can no longer be in the backyard. You are going to have to stay in the bathroom. I put in the bathroom. What can you do in the bathroom? Well, the dog is like, oh, there's soap in the bathroom, and it's delicious. I'm going to eat all the soap. And it's like, oh, get the dog out to the backyard again. So whatever I tried, this, it would eat up Jenna's Barbies, and I would say, I'm going to try I'm disappointed with you, the stern, I'm not happy with you. You have lost my approval. And the dog's like, well, then I'll just take a nap till you get over that. There was nothing I could do to negatively impact this dog's experience. And so the dog manifested, of course, a new and better life as a hunting dog on somebody's property out in East Texas, and is living that dog's dream. And the lesson that I got from it is the truth that nothing can negatively impact my experience. That is the lesson I got from Bella, and a sweet dog who has found her forever home, which is lovely. So nothing can negatively impact our experience. Here's the second one. Take a deep breath in. Sometimes others believe that their happiness depends on my response to them. But that is never true. All right, take a deep breath in to let that one in. And say the whole thing through. Sometimes others believe that their happiness depends on my response to them. But that is never true. And those people that we try to stand on our heads for them to make them happy. I think it starts when they're babies, because when Jenna was little, I really did feel like I could make her happy. If she's crying, I could, it's like, I make the silly face and I make the silly sounds, and what can I do to make you happy? And sometimes we don't outgrow that. We start thinking that I'm the one who's supposed to make you happy. And then people start saying, well, if you would only do this, then I would be happy. And so we try to please, and we sacrifice what we're called to do, trying to make other people happy. It never works, does it? It doesn't work. So I love this story in the Bible where the woman who's hemorrhaging, she has this mindset that if I can just touch the hem of the garment, then I'll be healed. Jesus can heal me if I can just touch the hem of the garment. And so she does, and so she is. And what I love best about the story is that Jesus turns to her, and he doesn't say, yes, I am a really good healer, and another one, yes, I did a great job. He says to her, daughter, it is your faith that has made you well. It wasn't me, it's what you put in the space between us. It was your faith in me that made you well. What do we put in the space between us? So take a deep breath in. Here's the next one. Ooh, it's a good one. When others lash out at me in anger, when others lash out at me in anger with words or actions, their battle is not with me. Their battle is not with me, but with themselves. But with themselves. Take a deep breath in. When others lash out at me in anger with words or actions, their battle is not with me, but with themselves. We don't have to take that on. It's their battle. And I've read a story about a woman who, her son was killed by a young boy, and she was there in the courtroom as they were sentencing this young man. And at the end of the sentencing, she stood up in the courtroom and she pointed at him and said, "I will kill you." And the boy went off to jail. A couple months into his sentence, she came and visited him. She was his first visitor. She kept coming back, and she would bring him little gifts, cigarettes, books, cards. When he was finally released, she said, "You know, you're going to need a job." She helped him get a job when he got out of jail. And then when he got the job, she said, "You're going to need a place to stay while you get back up on your feet. Would you like to come stay with me for a few weeks?" So he came and he lived with her. 8 months later, she brought him into the living room and she said, "Do you remember that day in the courtroom?" And I said, "I was going to kill you." And he goes, "Huh? I remember that." And she said, "I killed you. The boy who killed my son is dead to me, and my son is dead, and what's left is you. And I would like to adopt you to be my son." That's the power of what we put into the space within us. It's healing, a healing space. So when others lash out at us, their battle is with themselves. And we can, sometimes from a safe distance, we can still hold that space. We still get to control what we put in the space between us. We can still put love and compassion into that space, even if sometimes it needs to be from a safe distance. I love Jesus. He says, if a man has 100 sheep, this one, and one of them wanders away, what will he do? Won't he leave the 99 others and go search for the one that he's lost? And if he finds it, I tell you the truth, he will rejoice over it more than the other 99 that didn't wander away. You ever notice that when a relationship severs in an unhealthy way, how it becomes the center of our focus, how it just feels off? And our attention goes to that one. If I can only mend that relationship, and the celebration and the joy that comes when we can reunite and come back into harmony with each other, it's a powerful thing. So here's the bottom line. One more affirmation. Take a deep breath in. When I release all concern about how others feel about me, and focus only on how I feel about them, I will understand who I really am. And I will discover what true freedom really is. Take a deep breath in. I'll read that one all the way through. When I release all concern about how others feel about me and focus only on how I feel about them, I will understand who I really am, and I will discover what true freedom really is. It's up to us. We get to choose what we put in the space between us. And in the last days of Jesus' ministry, he knew he was going off to other adventures, and he was giving advice to his disciples. And imagine what it must have been like. It's like, okay, here's your job, is to take these teachings out to the world, and know that when you do this, a lot of people aren't going to like you. They're going to try to stone you. They're going to try to crucify you. They're going to try to put you in jail. Just know that's the track you're on. Good luck, guys. And so he gives them some words of wisdom. And what he says to them is, do not let your hearts be troubled. You may not always be popular. You may not always like what you're saying, but it's your purpose. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Do not let them be afraid. And then he says, those who have my commandments and keep them, remember his commandments, love God, love each other. Those who have my commandments and keep them are those who love me. And those who love me will be loved by my Father, and I will love them and reveal myself to them. So I'm here with you. Love God, love each other. Put love into the space between. Love God. Love the gift of your life that you've been given. Love each other, and I'll be here for you. So we go back to that study at Harvard University, 268 men. We go back to the study in Boston, all these inner city kids. You know what they found was the underlying theme that created lasting happiness? Good guess. Altruism. Altruism. And the definition of altruism, selfless concern for the well-being of others. It's a recognition that I can use my gifts to lift you up, and in doing that, I am lifted up. Selfless concern for the well-being of others. And it's what happens when we step out of this mindset of there's me in my life and there's you in your life, but we are connected. And what we put into the space between us is just as real, if not more real, than all of us as individuals. In your bulletin, you'll see on the back side, you'll see a picture of an elephant. And the man next to it, over here, his name is Lawrence Anthony. He's known as the Elephant Whisperer. He has a book called The Elephant Whisperer. And he was a guy who had a promising career in real estate. He decided he wanted to dedicate his life to protecting elephants in Africa. And so he set up this 5,000-acre preserve, elephant preserve. And he was known for his ability to work with crazy elephants. There was this herd. He had just opened up his preserve, and he gets this phone call. And he says, we have this herd of elephants that is wild and unruly, and they're tearing everything apart. And if you don't take them, we're going to have to shoot them all because they're crazy, they're angry, they don't like people, and they're dangerous. Will you take them? And he says, sure. So they round up the elephants. In the roundup, one of the elephants and her calf is shot and killed. The rest of the elephants come to the preserve. He said he could see there was a young male elephant. His mother was the one shot. His little sister was the one killed. And he came out with ears flared with just hatred in his eyes. We don't trust you humans. We don't want to be here. They came into the preserve. There was a matriarch of the herd, as elephants do, and he named the matriarch Nana. Nana was an escape artist, and she was smart. So they had an 8,000-volt fence around this preserve. She touched it, and she's like, okay, that's intense. So she went around the whole perimeter so she could feel the energy to see if there was any weak space in the fence. She figured out where the generator was. They smashed it like a tin can, broke free, and out they go. We are wild and free elephants. This is how this is going to play out. You know, she's like, this is how it works. I'm taking care of my herd, and we don't want to be around you humans. So she breaks out middle of the night, and of course in Africa, all the game hunters are like, okay, these elephants are no longer protected. So the word goes out, grab your rifles, we can go hunt elephant now. So he's in this race to get this herd back onto the preserve where they can be safe. So he rounds them up, he brings them back, he fixes the fence, and of course, a couple nights later, she's got all the elephants out at the fence. And he said he had this moment with her where he's 4 o'clock in the morning, he's out there in the dark, and he can feel her presence and feel her rage and feel her determination to get her herd on the other side of this fence. And he starts having this conversation with her, starts talking to her just like you would talk to a friend, and says, I'm here to help you. And if you take your herd out there, they're going to kill you. And you're safe here, and this is a good place. So I hope you'll stay. And at one point in that conversation with her, their eyes meet, and he can feel this flicker of connection. And then she retreats. And it was then he realized that in order to protect this herd, he had to build a relationship with them. And so he started living with the herd. day and night, like risking his life to be with this herd of crazy wild elephants. And they began to trust him. He talked to them. He lived with them. When Nana had a new calf, she would present it to him. And then when he had a grandson, he would do the same thing. He would present his child to the herd, like they were family. Lawrence died March 2nd, 2012. A few days after he died, his family saw something amazing. The elephants had been living, for the past 2 years, they'd been living in 2 different herds several miles from the house. They weren't allowed near the house anymore because it was too dangerous for them. But after Lawrence passed away, the family saw a procession. One day, one the next day. These elephants in single file had been walking over 12 hours, 2 different herds from 2 different locations, so they could be with the family during that funeral time. And what you see, this bottom picture, is the picture taken by the family of the elephants arriving to honor their friend. And so the question is, how did they know? How did they know that he'd passed away? They hadn't been there in years. So what if the things that are real are not the things? But what if what's real is what we put in the space between us? And animals know it. They can feel it. It's real to them, and they can respond to that. I invite you to take a deep breath in. And think about what you're putting into this space between you and the people in your life. Of course, there's the ones you love, the ones that are just so easy to love. If you're up for a challenge, bring to mind someone that maybe is a blessing because they challenge you. They challenge you to remember who you are. They challenge you. And as you bring that person to mind, affirm with me, I bring love to the space between us. I bring love to the space between us. I bring compassion to the space between us. I bring compassion to the space between us. I bring forgiveness to the space between us. I bring forgiveness to the space between us. I bring appreciation to the space between us. I bring appreciation to the space between us. Take a deep breath in to let that in. And so it is. And so it is. So we take this time to move into meditation. Take a deep breath in, deep cleansing breath. And I invite you to go within. And here in this space, I'll share a verse from Colossians chapter 3. Holy and beloved, clothe yourself with compassion. Clothe yourself with kindness. Clothe yourself with humility. Clothe yourself with meekness and patience. Bear with one another. And if anyone has a complaint against another, forgive. Forgive each other just as the Lord has forgiven you. You must also forgive. Above all, clothe yourself with love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. Clothe yourself in love. Let this be our garment. As we clothe ourselves in love, we know that we can be in relationship with ourselves, with each other, with our community, with our world, with our earth. We can be in relationship. We can create heaven on earth by putting love into the space between us. It doesn't matter what is happening out in the world around us. We clothe ourselves in love, and that love guides us. That love is our wisdom. It is our knowing. It is our protection. It is our gift. When we give thanks for this love, this divine presence that we clothe ourselves in, remembering that one power and one presence that is God, known by so many names, but experienced by all as the power, the presence of love. We breathe in deeply, opening our hearts so that the love that is the truth of us may express through every breath, through every exhale we bring to the world the uniqueness of our own love. In the silence, we take this power, this presence, this awareness of the love that we are, and we bring to mind any relationships or any circumstances where that love is being called forth. And we allow that love to move into the space between in a way that is healing, in a way that is respectful and honoring, in a way that is forgiving and compassionate. We take this into the silence. Thank you, God. And so it is. Amen.